played Warcraft 3 just a little bit. I don't remember it looking this good.
This was the beginning of like those projects at Blur where stuff is really heavy.
So what are some tricks you guys use to be able to render shots with like that many zombies?
ZBrush really has allowed an entire new generation of character modelers to just thrive.
We're looking at the Halo 2 remastered cinematics, which, boy, you guys knocked it out of the park on this one.
It's like you thought you knew what Halo was supposed to look like. This is what Halo actually looks like.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another great episode of VFX Artist React. This is a very special one. We've been wanting to react to game cinematics forever, and we are joined by one of the best possible guests for this. This is Jerome, Denjean, also known as Jed. He is the supervising creative director for Love, Death, and Robots at Blur Studio.
I've been working at Blur Studio for 20 years. I started as a character modeler, and then I moved to lighting, rendering, then started supervising shows.
Well, I can't wait to jump in on some of this history of game cinema here, from stuff from like way back to Warcraft 3 all the way to now. We've been wanting to do this episode forever, so we get to finally do it. And with like probably one of the best guests we could probably do it with. So yeah, let's jump in. Man, I remember the Warcraft cinematics when they came out way back in the day.
I played Warcraft 3 just a little bit. I don't remember it looking this good. Maybe it was because I was on a tiny monitor. There's been so many jokes about the pre-rendered cutscenes, you know. That's just been a whole topic in gaming forever, which is like, hey, is this rendered in engine, or is this like something else, or like, are you cheating us by that? But like ultimately, when you're playing a game and you get to see something like this, it's kind of okay when the actual game itself doesn't look that good, because this just kind of like hypes you up for the vibe of it and helps get the image in your mind of like what you're playing. So
yeah, and it was a reward, you know, like it was like a little treat. After like you passed like 5 missions, then you'd get the cutscene.
Heroes arise to challenge fate and lead their brethren to battle.
This one is from Blizzard, and this one was like a huge inspiration at the time because it looked attainable, but it was so well done, and it was just so epic. I mean, these were mini movies, and they had like great characters, and they looked like badass. And I mean, who did not want to work on a shot like this, like back then, you know? You know, like I think that's one thing about the game cinematics. Like you can almost tell what year they came out just by looking at them. But at the time, to be able to do something like this was just like everybody wanted to be a part of that.
Oh, you got armies?
did you see the hair
grass?
physics?
Yeah, you have dust? You got bugs?
You got water on the lens in that last shot where like the guy just like points at the, and I was like, oh man, I wish I could have come up with that shit.
Yeah. When you look at this animation though, what's some stuff that you see that's missing? Where you're like, now like technology that you would almost take for granted. What are the things that are missing in these renders?
Everything just feels very, very flat. The metals just feel like a little dull, you know. The grass definitely could have a little extra speck now. All the shaders have evolved so much, like now, especially like this close-up shot of the orc at the end, you can see that there was no skin shader at the time. Like you just had like one shader, and then you were like, okay, well, I'm gonna try to like make it a little, you know, and you only had like specular highlights. You didn't have reflections or ray traced reflections at the time.
Yeah, it's funny like looking at it, it's like the rocks kind of look like the same surface shininess as the grass is the kind of same surface shininess as the metal, and like, yeah, really all you can change is like the color and like the specular. And so nowadays you can render reflections, and that's what specular highlights were attempting to mimic, except a specular highlight was just the bright white shine from a singular light source. It was very easy to calculate. It was a great way of faking reflections, because when you look at things like my Apple Watch here, you really just feel like you kind of see the shiny bits from like the lights reflecting on it. I mean, those are actually reflections. There's more than just the shiny bright white highlights. But if you just had a little soft white dot, well, you know, that's easy enough to move around on the surface and do a little angle measurement. And yeah, when you look at this, that's where you see everything has just white shines on it, because that's how they're getting things to look shiny, since you're not doing actual reflections.
And all the specular highlights, they were round. And that was just, but they were already faking like some caustics inside the eyes. It's pretty cool.
There's actually kind of like that shading around the iris.
Oh yeah, on the other side of the iris, it's like bright.
It's like probably the most complicated shader in the entire piece.
Yeah, or it's just an artist sitting down and being like, oh, I'm gonna literally paint this side to be brighter. because I know that's what it should look like. Because this is very much like back in the day where it's like you don't get there by just physically simulating light. You get there by an artist going, I know how light works. I'm going to do my shortcuts and tricks to get that look.
So you can kind of see like the limits of it, like when you look at it like 20 years later. But still, like I feel like this one still holds up pretty well.
Warhammer. Yes, Warhammer 40K. Ooh, now the smoke is looking like volumetric.
Let's date this. When is this from? When did
I
this come out?
think this one is 2004.
2004. Oh my God.
If I remember correctly, Tim was outside at the lunch table and he was like, man, I had to pass on this Warhammer cinematic today because the schedule was too aggressive. And Dave Wilson, who was one of the supervisors who started like within 2 weeks of me, just looked at him and was like, what do you mean? Like, what's wrong with you? And Tim was like, no, dude, really, they need like that cinematic in 3 weeks. And Dave was like, so what? Like, let's do it. Let's do it. I mean, it was like a military operation to deliver this thing in 3 weeks, but they did it.
As much as like things have changed since this was made, there's still like the raw energy of like, all right, we're animating this, we're doing compositions, we're like setting up different particle effects, and it's like, yeah, maybe like rendering's a little faster and simulating things are a little bit faster, but like just the volume of action and movement and shots doing this in 3 weeks today, it's just as hard.
You can stop on a lot of frames and then there's just like little funny like animation, like funny faces like from the Zorks. I mean, it was a fun time because there was just so much energy and just so much like, it's like the brotherhood.
Yeah.
That one was a cinematic that I supervised, that Tim directed, and that we did for E3 in 2005. There's so much in it. There's so much. This was the first project where we were using HDR lighting and reflections, and we were rendering OpenEXRs. And it was just like every day we're like, my God, look at how good it looks.
HDRs was such a revolutionary thing for 3D. And you look at the armor here, you notice it's not just white circles. Like you have gold reflections and blue reflections in different shapes, because now you're sampling basically a 360-degree image and pulling from whatever you want on that image to make a reflection versus just a single white circle that gets placed on things. But yeah, HDR was just one of those things where suddenly you could take a step closer to reality and you're like, oh, we might actually get there. We might actually be able to make things photoreal and physically accurate.
We thought it was photoreal at the time. I was like, well, I don't know how we're gonna top this one because this is just like the real deal. And everybody was responsible for a sequence. It was one person responsible for that whole sequence.
I feel like we're coming back to that. Like, we're not there yet, but I feel like we're returning to this era of one artist makes a shot. It's not like, okay, well, I need my mocap team, I need my character model team. It's like, no, like, I have a vision for a shot, I'll make the shot.
A shot like this was insane at the time to just see like the amount of zombies in there.
So what are some tricks you guys use to be able to render shots with like that many zombies?
We'll try to render them all, and then it will
you just put them all in and like render.
It's probably not gonna work. So then like in this case, it's probably rendering like quadrants. Like so he'll try to render half, see what it does. If it's still not working, try a quarter. And then just kind of put them all back together in comp. But there's some projects where it just wouldn't render, so we'd like render them on cards and then just put cards. And if you pause on that one, there's one head on that monster that is Tim Miller's head.
Oh, really?
That the modeler just snuck in.
That's him?
That's Tim Miller.
Nice.
And then he dies a horrible death.
War is everywhere. The dwarves fight a desperate battle against the savage greenskins.
There was just so much to do on this one, but felt like by then we had found like our style a little bit more. We had to fake so much stuff to just kind of suggest this massive armies. That's the last character I've ever modeled.
Really, right there?
Yeah, that was when ZBrush came out.
What an industry-changing tool that was.
Yeah.
Tell us about ZBrush. What did ZBrush do for you?
Well, ZBrush allows you to approach a model like it's clay. And you can approach it as if you were a sculptor, and you can do something without having to worry too much at first about whether you're gonna have enough definition, enough polygons for it. Before that, if you wanted to model that girl's chainmail, for example, every single like piece had to be modeled and then duplicated. And if it was not enough definition, then you had to start over. So like that guy, for example, like the arm transforms into that kind of claw thing. Before that, to model something like this, you had to have like enough definition, you had to extrude polygons, but you couldn't do too much because then you couldn't rig it, it would be too heavy. So it was really complicated to do this kind of really organic, kind of weird models before. And ZBrush really has allowed an entire new generation of character modelers to just thrive because they're good artists and they're good sculptor. So it's really liberated like a lot of amazing artists.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I need more polygons here so I can like make finer details. Like hit a button, whoop, and it just subdivides. Like, okay, I'm good now. And then of course you could have your ZBrush model, which is super high detailed. It's got all your fine detail you painted into it, and then you don't necessarily need to export it as polygons. Then you can start exporting it as displacement maps or normal maps or bump maps.
Yeah, and so you start like from that point on, you start to see like a little bit more detail on the faces in particular, and you start to see like some monsters that just feel much more detailed and just feels more rich.
You've seen the Astartes animations? The one guy doing all the Warhammer animations on his own?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm always in awe at like those directors that have this passion of like just showing that little project, and they'll do everything themselves and they have to be scrappy. Because like when you have limited budget and limited resources, that's when you have to be like really creative and you gotta go around like, a system to do it. And kudos to that guy, man, because it's a lot of work to do all this and finish it to the level that he finished it. Like it's a work of passion. And we all saw it like at Blur when it came out. We're like, Jesus.
When you guys at Blur see something like this, do you reach out to the artist, be like, hey, like we should know each other, or do you just kind of let it be?
Yeah, we'll always try. If they want to come and work with us, then great. But we also want to foster the community aspect of things where just tell us like, next time you have a project, we'd love to see it. And, next time you're in town, like come and check us out. We all have something to gain when it's a community of like-minded storytellers, because one day this guy will direct a feature film, and even if it's not with us, then we'll be super happy to see him succeed.
Oh. Shoot, time to subscribe.
Wow, well done. A new twist on an old classic.
Yeah.
So this one is the third one in a trilogy of cinematics that we did for Elder Scrolls Online. And this one was kind of like a little bit of for me personally, not the end of an era, but it was like the culmination of like the first 10 years at Blur. That battle scene was crazy. There's just so many people that we can do it. This was the beginning of like those projects at Blur where stuff is really heavy, because now we can render hair properly. So let's render hair. Now we can render like perfect reflections, like, and it's physically correct. We can do like a little bit of crowds and have like 15 people like run towards the wall. Like, let's put them all in. And then all that stuff just kind of adds up to like craziness.
What would you say is like the Blur look?
There was a point where like people would talk to us about the Blur look, which made us like a little a little anxious, because we've always tried to do like a lot of different styles. But I think this would be probably the closest to the Blur look, at least at that era. Characters that were almost photoreal, but not quite there yet, like in the facial animation. Like this one is 25 minutes of characters looking pretty cool, but there's not like a single line of dialogue. Mm-hmm. So that helped. I love this project. I just love the direction. I love the universe of it and how we approached it, and these characters, man.
So now we're gonna look at some cinematics that people have mentioned a ton in comments. By the way, if you want us to take a look at something on the show, leave a comment down below with your suggestion. But we're looking at the Halo 2 remastered cinematics, which, boy, you guys knocked it out of the park on this one.
It's like you thought you knew what Halo was supposed to look like. This is what Halo actually looks like.
Slip space ruptures directly off our battle cluster.
Show me.
This is a lot of stuff you guys have to make, though. This is like a full-on movie's worth of rendered shots.
Every time I see a frame of that project, I still like my heart still beats faster at the conversation that we had with Tim, where he's like, "We're gonna do the cinematics for Halo," and then he's like, "It's gonna be 50 minutes in 9 months." And I'm like, "What?" We're like, "Okay, but so is that gonna be like lower quality?" And it's just like, "No, what are you talking about?" I remember being like, "But why?" But at the same time, like, you know, when the train is going down without the brakes down the tracks, I still would like to have a little bit of control. So I was like, okay, well, I'd love to work on it. And so we split the supervising duties with Kevin on that one. But man, it was a military operation, and the people that we worked with, like at Microsoft, were great. But it was an organization and a growth of the studio that was a little scary when we started, I gotta say. And that was probably one of the biggest, like, okay, we gotta have our shit together, because otherwise it's not gonna fly. What was interesting about this one is that it was for the 10-year anniversary, and it was going into the game, but we had to like match what they had done with the cinematics like 10 years earlier.
God dang.
Yeah, it's bonkers.
Is this almost like too good in the sense that like when you start playing the game, does it ruin your experience? Because you're just...
It's the whole like debate of like, some people prefer just an entire like real-time experience and not be taken out of the game, while for certain people they like to have these pre-rendered cinematics as like a little bit of a treat in between missions.
Oh, absolutely. No, I'm not critiquing your work at all. It frightens me of how good it is.
But to be fair, when they released that Halo 10-year anniversary game, the graphics were also like making a huge jump.
Yeah.
And it was mind-blowing too. Like it was crazy.
I have a question for you guys.
Okay.
So they hide Master Chief's identity in the games. Whenever he takes off his helmet, it always like pans away. So my question is, what did you guys have under his helmet?
Well, we know who Master Chief is because we just like plop the helmet out and
They just click the little eyeball next to the
And then we
helmet.
saw who he
It
was.
hides it.
Is it just like
There's no
a teapot under that helmet or something? Or a tinier mask? Well, they did do like somebody hacked the original Halo 1 at the ending cinematic where he takes his helmet off so they keep the camera there, and it's just another helmet.
So the cinematics for the game, there's moments of like photorealism in there, but then when you actually play the game in between the cutscenes, the visual fidelity, there's like a huge gap there. But in the most recent Modern Warfare game, so you guys did the cinematics for that, the game itself happens to just be good enough. So when the cutscenes hit, like, yes, they're ultra cinematic, but then when you go into gameplay, it's good enough where it's like, it doesn't feel like you're getting a loss of quality still. So it's a little bit more seamless in a way.
What is your message from Captain Price?
This stuff is like the one that's like really, really eye-catching. At moments you're like, yeah, this is totally real.
this is the collaboration of the supervisors of the layout team, like with the camera work. It's a camera work that you would use on a real live action shoot.
Yeah.
And same with the lighting. It's using the exact same techniques that you would use on a live action shoot.
I noticed on that shot where the sun goes behind him, you have halation on the edges of him, which is very much an emulation of how real cameras work. And you know, when you're rendering a CG scene, it's like there's no such thing as like a sensor being overblown or finger smear on the lens causing things to bloom out in a weird way. And so you guys are clearly starting to emulate how a real camera works, as well as the imperfections of that, to achieve a bit of a photorealism.
This is really a culmination of like almost 20 years of Blur just trying to kind of get better. It shows the road that we traveled, what Blur did on this one. This is the state of like what a studio can do on game cinematics and by extension on Love, Death and Robots. This kind of cinematics just becomes these like super productions now because it requires everything to be at such a top level, and it requires such huge teams that it's very different approach than what we used to do 20 years ago.
What's the hardest thing to do right now in CGI? What's the next advancement you're looking for?
I still think like hair. There's still some stuff that, at least for the type of software that's mostly like off the shelf that we're using in game cinematics. And then after that, it's just rendering more stuff. But you know, like real-time rendering is also another venue that we're really looking at now, because obviously it allows the directors to approach this kind of projects like much differently, because now you can make lighting decisions much earlier on, and then you can change stuff and not have to wait weeks or months before you see the results of like a bad decision. You know? Engines like Unreal are at a point now where you can get that kind of fidelity. You might still have to cheat a few things, but it's almost there. And the fact that it's real time, or you know, almost, as opposed to like some of those frames take 5, 6, 10 hours, you know, like, and it's expensive.
We are going to be getting rid of every single piece of merch in our store. And we're going to be playing a little bit of a game to make this happen. You see, starting right now, there's a sale going on. And every single week, items are going to be getting cheaper and cheaper. But of course, every single week, the store is going to get emptier and emptier. So if you're looking for a deal, you got to pick just the right time to jump in. Here's how this is going to work.
So, starting today, everything is 15% off.
Then, starting October 31st, everything in the store will be 25% off.
That's nothing. Starting November 14th, it goes to 40% off. Ow!
Ow! Starting November 21st, everything will be 50% off, but that's not all.
And starting on Cyber Monday, November 28th, everything will be 75% off.
QuarterDigital.com subscribers get an additional 15% off at any point. So if they wait all the way to the end, they're getting 90% off. Man, what a great time to be a QuarterDigital.com subscriber.
Wait, Niko, if we're going to be offering things at 90% off, why don't I just wait until Cyber Monday?
If I need to make things cost 1 penny for them to sell, I will. But the thing is, they'll probably sell before that. You wait too long, you might miss it. And once they're gone for good. We're reapproaching how we're doing merch next year entirely. So if you like any of these designs, it's your last chance.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
So if you're interested in getting the best deals that we've ever offered, head on over to QuarterDigital.store before these items are gone for good.
It was so great sitting down with you to actually take a look at some of like the coolest, most inspiring animations that I've seen over like the last 15 years. To say that they're just like, you know, cinematics for a game is, I feel like, a really reductive way to think about this, because this is like stuff that is inspiring for like generations of artists as well. The competition that like you had with other studios is like also propelling so many individuals out there. So thank you for helping make all these.
Thank you guys for having me. And I hope that it inspires like, you know, a new generation of storytellers or just visual artists to do that medium. It's a fun gig, you know?
Yeah.
Heck yeah. Sweet. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you guys.
See you guys in the next one.